interesting because you look at boards today and the researches that we're doing, they're saying, give us people who are really all around great athletes, may not even be in our industry, may not be in that C-suite, but are really hands-on and go to market. And also they're still working, so they're very relevant. So there's a real shift that we're seeing in terms of opening that aperture and therefore allowing more people of color and women and underrepresented groups to get on boards.
It is best available athlete, especially for larger enterprises that are looking for ways to accelerate growth, which becomes more difficult as you grow, and looking for those little nuanced differentiators in their go-to-market that come from the perspectives of people who are not necessarily in that business.
So let's start with, in the boardroom, better conversation, better ideation, better diversity of thought and participation. Let's go to senior management, a higher level of respect working for a company where the board looks like the employees that you serve and the customers you serve. Let's go to the employees, working for an organization where the senior leaders, both the board and the executive leadership, start looking more like the rest of the world. And then wait for it, customers. Customers are going to be motivated to know that companies that they do business with or have a choice to do business with reflect the kind of world that they want to be in, not the world we're in or the one we're in, but the one we're going to be.
I think intentionality is critical. And I think that it starts there with the intention to change your board and incorporate more diversity into your board. But I think you have to back up a step. Before you can have intentionality, you have to have board seats available. And that means you either have to increase the size of your board or you have to do a very thorough assessment and ask yourself some tough questions about your current board and who's performing and who isn't. And I think that that takes courage. And so I think it's really beholden on the leadership of a board to hold themselves accountable to create those board seats and to create the turnover and the refreshment that's necessary to affect the intentionality of bringing the diversity into the room.
You have to make bold moves. Boards have to be courageous to transform. It's very easy to just keep everything the way it is. So you do need disruptors on your board who can help lead that transformation. I think you have to press for excellence. We have to look at our boards, not through rose-colored lenses, but through the reality and say, this isn't checking boxes here. We need the best to help this company be successful. Yeah, it's okay to have boards be bigger for a year or two, which also then gives the opportunity for people to retire appropriately.
Society has found its voice and is demanding change. And I think staff have found their voice and maybe lost some of their patience with lip service and good intentions.
The data shows that the mandatory retirement age is actually creeping up, which tells us that boards aren't finding it to be a particularly useful tool because perhaps, someone hits an arbitrary age, but they're still the best director on the board. Maybe that's not the best way to determine whether someone stays on or not. Even if you don't have a fixed term, having some expectation, some baseline communication among the board about what is a reasonable term.
Term limits or age limits are arbitrary. It's not about, is that director still relevant and adding value? And I think those are the questions that have to get answered. And those are the discussions that have to take place between lead directors or board chairs, heads of nom and gov with individual directors. And to get a sense of where the company is headed over the next 3 to 5 years. Are the people that are on the board still relevant to help that company be successful in navigating that change environment?
And so I think, and the board members knew that we reviewed their performance on an annual basis. And so they came to really understand that being on the board was a privilege and not an entitlement.
If you can identify high achievers who are looking at their first board experience or their first big board or their first public board, you can uncover so much in terms of attitude and energy. And people often don't realize that a well-run board and an engaged board can have an impact on the culture of the company and the energy in a company.
It goes beyond the technical skills. You really look at that very broad leadership ability that the strategic thinking skills, all of those innate leadership skills are really, I think, sometimes more important than the technical skills. And so I think it's really important to not have artificial barriers, like, they need to be a sitting CEO, or they need to, have other board experience, because you're never going to open up and expand your pool.
Not everybody on the board needs to be the subject matter expert of the industry that the company's in. You need to have some generalists who can bring wealth of experience, oversight, insight, and foresight to the deliberations.
When there are 3 or more voices, they get heard. And that's where I believe we are now. Diverse voices are being heard, and they're helping to drive significant and meaningful outcomes for organizations.
Because what's good today may not be what's good in the future. So the bottom line is that a strategic approach to board succession planning delivers positive benefits to overall board and individual director performance, and it increases long-term shareholder value if it's done in a thoughtful, systematic, rigorous way.
One of the most effective tools we have is we maintain a robust skills matrix. And so it's really important so that as a board, we always have this sense of where we have strong expertise and the areas of where we need more support.
We're satisfied that we have good balance on the board, and that's a deliberate thing. It's a tricky balancing act, but I think it needs to be done. I'm thankful people did it in my case, frankly.
What gets measured gets done. So I think it's important for boards to make commitments and statements. One of the things that we have to be on the lookout for is what I refer to as double checking the box. So if you can get a woman that has an ethnic background, that's great. It's like a double check. And I don't think that's the intention of what we're trying to do. We have to make sure that each diverse group moves forward independently and together, but not at the expense of the other.
There's no can't. I don't accept I can't find candidates. I think that's a very lame excuse, quite frankly. I think if you are sufficiently convicted about the importance of a diverse board, you will open the aperture, you will be more open-minded, understanding what are the real skill sets and experiences as opposed to what's the title that a person has.
Sometimes there is almost a hesitation to insist on the right outcome. And so often people say, well, it's hard to find the right person, or, we looked everywhere, and that is accepted. And frankly, in no other place in business do we accept that. For some reason, it's seen as bad etiquette in some boardrooms to insist on the outcome here, and it really shouldn't be. Every new spot that you open up is an opportunity to move the board in the right direction. So you really need to proactively refresh the board. And, if you have a 10-member board, one should come off every year. And of course, that takes courage, but it doesn't happen by itself.
The only way we're going to solve the board diversity issue is to address executive diversity, because that is oftentimes the pipeline from which we recruit.
I have been a believer in diversity for years. I have worked hard at creating diverse teams, diverse boards, not because I think it's a quote unquote right thing to do, because I think it's a fundamental business imperative. The more diverse viewpoints and the more diverse perspectives you have sitting around any table within any organization dealing with tough business problems, the better the debate and the better the business outcomes. So for me, it is just a fundamental imperative. And I think as boards, given that's where we're focusing, as 100% of the boards realize and become convicted about the importance of that diversity, I think we will be able to make accelerated progress.